All right.
Second.
I think you can start.
So
We may have to
okay.
just deal with this mode if it doesn't work out. Yeah. So thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. We welcome you all who have connected on the call. My name is Sarah Kadu, your moderator for today's webinar. This week, running from 25th through 31st October 2021, we celebrate the Open Access Week on the theme, It Matters How We Open Knowledge, Building Structure Equity. AFLIA, our host, has lined up two major activities that will lead discussions and also promote action plans needed to sustain ongoing efforts that ensure structural equity for open access across the continent. The first activity is a webinar on the survey findings on the state of open access on the continent. The second activity is a panel discussion on a well thought through theme. More details shall be shared at the end of this webinar. Colleagues, I'm happy to inform you that earlier this month, the Library Education and Training Institutions section of AFLIA ran a survey that aimed at understanding the state and level of awareness of open access and its policies among library and information workers in academic and all research institutions, the library and information science schools, and the capacity of such policies to address structural equity in knowledge creation while highlighting the opportunities and challenges LIS schools, academics, and information professionals face in relation to embracing open access practices in their institutions and workplaces. At this point, colleagues, allow me to introduce Ms. Andiswa Mfengu, her presenter of the survey findings. Andiswa is an emerging scholar. She's a lecturer and a doctoral candidate at the Department of Knowledge and Information Stewardship, University of Cape Town, South Africa. She is serving as Vice Chair of AFLIA Library Education and Training Institutions section and the chapter assembly representative for the Association for Information Science and Technology Africa chapter. Friends, join me in welcoming Ms. Andiswa to share the findings from the survey. Ms. Andiswa, take on the virtual floor, and we look forward to the presentation.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and a warm welcome, colleagues, to this session. Our first celebration for this week as we celebrate the Open Access Week, which would started yesterday and finishing up end of the week. And Sarah has alluded to that AFLIA will be hosting 2 sessions and 2 webinars this week, which one is a panelist coming up later in this week. And we're so delighted for you to have joined us for this session. And I think without wasting any time, I will just go ahead and speak to the survey that the section has done. And of course, we're speaking to the state of open access in Africa among LIS professionals and practitioners, which the population was academics, researchers, librarians, and also students. And I think just a disclaimer up front, we've seen that with COVID and pandemic, there's been a lot of surveys, and we've had a lot of, librarians, academics, and researchers are overwhelmed. And also we are aware that online surveys generally have a low response rate. So of course we had these challenges, but we thought let us come in celebration of Open Access Week and actually present our findings of preliminary findings for the survey. So we're not generalizing from the survey. However, we can learn some insight from that and see how do we plan as AFLIA moving forward? Because I mean, we know there's certain challenges that have come up with that, but how do we then make sure that we make open access the norm? So I'm presenting on behalf of the section, which is the Library Education and Training section. So this is the overview for today's presentation. Sorry, I might look in I have two screens, so if I look away, just don't mind me. So we're looking at our overview. We'll be looking at what is open access and why, and open science. So just almost conceptualizing that before we start talking about the survey. And also we look into what is International Open Access Week. Why are we celebrating the Open Access Week? And why did we take the we do the survey? And I know Sarah did allude to this, but I'll touch this briefly. So for people that might be joining us a bit late. And also we'll look at open access survey, the preliminary results, as I mentioned, that this was done over a 2-week period, and we're just presenting our preliminary findings in terms of the survey. And also we draw some recommendations from the survey. So we'll also touch on that. And I think many a times we do lots of webinars, but we're like, okay, this webinar was great, but so what? So we included also a call to action. How do we move things forward? How do we make sure that the state of open access in Africa, when we look 2 years down the line, it's not what it is today. So we also included a call to action, which we're hoping that we can all engage in and have a discussion. How do we move things forward as an association? And also then a conclusion. So of course, to get started, what is open access? Why are we talking about open access week? Open access is viewed as literature that is digital. So of course, not much printing happens in terms of open access. A lot of things are digital and they're actually online. So we're dependent on the internet and having no load shedding, hopefully. And open access speaks to the literature being free of charge. And I mean, later we'll speak to free of charge. Is it free of charge to the user, or is it to the reader, or is it free of charge to the author? But of course, the idea is that it's free of charge, and also it's free of most copyright and licensing restrictions. So of course, if something is open access, then as a reader or as a researcher, I can actually take that work, use it and reuse it, translate it, and see how, as I see fit, of course, for mostly non-commercial purposes. So I can use it for my research or for my teaching purposes and stuff like that. And also open access is viewed as being barrier-free access. And by barrier-free, we're speaking to a price tag, that it is free of any cost. I mean, we have seen a lot of articles that would say from Emerald, from Taylor and Francis, that before you could read this article, you need to pay $20. So we're saying that's, of course, affordability then becomes a barrier. I could maybe afford one paper that's $20, but if I'm actually doing a whole study that's going to take me 5 years, 3 years, I mean, we look at masters and PhD studies, they take much longer. How many $20 then one has to pay? So it's free of that kind of barrier, affordability. So it could be a personal affordability, but it could also be affordability of my library. And also it's copyright free. And of course, this is not saying that the work is not copyrighted, but as I mean, we know when we publish as researchers, you are giving already the copyright to the publisher. So in this case, one is actually doing the same thing, but it's saying that the community can use the work freely and they can reuse the work without having to contact me every time they want to use that work. And you can see in this diagram that, of course, through that whole process, then we've got taxpayers, they get value for money, and also researchers in developing countries, which of course in the global south, we can have access to that scholarship, and practitioners can apply the findings because they're now able to read the work. And you see also there's more exposure, and higher citation rates have also been cited to be the case for open access. And now looking on the other side, what is open science? Because of course, with a lot, I mean, if you look at also this year's theme, it's building a structural equity, which speaks to also open science, not just having open access where you've got the final copy or the final publication being free to the readers and being free for people to access, but also speaking to the broader idea of the openness movement, which is open science, which speaks to, and of course, open science and open access, they are related, and which speaks to open educational resources open science infrastructures, where we've got an infrastructure which as a continent we can work together without having to pay. Then it's also the idea of open access publication, but also we've got open data, that the data that's supporting the publication is also made freely available. And also we've got open source software. So the software that I'm using, whether someone is accessing my work, let's say from Nigeria, from Cameroon, from Morocco, they can actually be able to see what source is supporting this study, and without me having to depend on proprietary software, where then if someone does not have a subscription to Microsoft Word, the simple thing is that, or Excel, then they can't access that work. But if we're using open software, then each and every person, wherever they are, when they access that research work, they can actually be able to view the source or whatever, or the software. And also speaks to open evaluation, open hardware. So it speaks to a number of things. And I think also with open science and when we speak to equity, we're also speaking about the diversity of knowledge, and that there's different ways of knowing. So that is also acknowledging that there's no one way to quality scholarship, but there's different ways. So this is almost all encompassing when we talk about the whole open science framework. And I guess then, before we get started with the survey, why Open Access Week? Why the International Open Access Week, and how did it come about? And why are we commemorating this week and celebrating it as AFLIA? So International Open Access Week, it's a global event, and now it's entering its 14th year. So it's been celebrated for a while. And you might be aware that also AFLIA has been celebrating it for some time now. And it is an opportunity for advocates of open access to engage communities and also to teach about the benefits of open access. And I mean, we know that some people might be aware of these benefits and they might be engaging in open access, but we know this is not necessarily common knowledge. So we use this week to actually just to kind of raise awareness and also celebrate and actually make the potential benefits of open access known to the broader LIS community and beyond. And also, I think most important also for this section, we would like to share what we've learned with colleagues, and that is true. And we're doing that through the survey, which we conducted as a section. But also, it's the idea behind the week is also to inspire wider participation in open access. It's one thing that we understand the benefits, but if we don't participate and engage, then we're probably not helping change the situation in Africa, which is to make more of our scholarship openly available and accessible, so that we can get that visibility, not just as a researcher, but also as the continent. And we would like to make open access the new norm. In terms of scholarship and research. And of course, Dr. Kadu did mention that this year's theme speaks to it matters how we open knowledge, and so we're building structural equity. And before I get started with presenting the preliminary findings from the survey, I'd like to acknowledge the team behind the survey and the team behind the section, which is Dr. Kadu, who is our chairperson, and myself, Andiswa, the vice chairperson, but also we've got Dr. Mensah, we've got Dr. Chisita, we've got Dr. Salubi, and we also have Dr. Lawal, who are part of the section and who made it possible for this survey, and who continue to just make sure that, yeah, they make AFLIA known from the library education and training institutions. Yes, so now speaking to the survey, why did we conduct the survey, and why is it relevant that we thought this was something that we should do? So we wanted to understand the awareness of LIS professionals and practitioners in terms of open access, but also to understand the preparedness to engage in open access. So how our researchers, our academics, the librarians, and well as students in LIS are willing to engage in open access and actually prepared to engage, and also just to see what challenges are there that might be hindering participation and engagement in terms of open access. And this, of course, would help us not just as a section, but also as AFLIA to build strategies to support open access to African scholarship, but also to support researchers, educators, librarians, and students to participate and engage in open access. And also speaking to, we could work together to build a structural equity as a continent. So now I'll quickly just present the preliminary survey findings that we had. And as I mentioned, we're not generalizing from this, the survey results, but we know we could lend some insight and hopefully build some capacity and support for a greater engagement. And we know open access is something that is some people are still battling to engage with, and of course using a survey with so many surveys and competing, and we know also online surveys have a low response rate, and hence we're not planning to generalize on the findings, but to say this is what we did and this is what we found and how can we move forward from there. So we had participation from Uganda, Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Mauritius, and Zambia. If you see on the with the graph there. And also we wanted to say who is participating. So we've got there's almost 8 countries that participated, but who are they that participated? And of course we can see we had most participants were librarians, and of course this were librarians at different levels. Assistants had systems librarians, but we also had lecturers. So 15 were librarians, and we had lecturers, which were 12, and we had research fellows, students, postgrad students, mostly that participated, senior lecturers and associate professor and professors that participated in the survey. And also we looked at the institutions that are participating, and what kind of institution that was. So we see majority of the participating institutions were research intensive institutions, which scored us 56%, followed by universities of technology. And we see colleges and others were actually as a smaller percentage. And on the right, you can see these are the institutions that participated. We can see we had Ghana, we had Uganda, we had Nigeria, we had South Africa, we had Ibadan, we had Zimbabwe. So these are the institutions that responded to the survey. I will not read each and every one of them. And of course, then, as I mentioned in getting started, what is the purpose? What did we want to uncover in terms of the survey? So awareness was a critical thing, because it's one thing to say we want to do all those great things, but are people even aware of open access? So we looked at if the participants were aware of open access, and it was a very good 95% where people said they are aware of open access, and we had 5%, which was only 2 people that were not aware of open access. And we're hoping those 2 people are probably attending today, and they'll attend later in the week to understand what is open access all about. And another critical aspect for the survey was understanding what open access benefits are important. So we know there's a lot of potential benefits with open access, but then different benefits are important to different people. So we looked at what were important to this sample that responded to the survey, and 85% of the participants, which was the majority, what was important for them was that more people can read the results of the work, who will not be able to read it otherwise. So of course, then it's almost removing that those barriers, that if I remove the $20 price tag to the work, then more people would read that work, because then they don't have to pay $20 and they've got access to the internet. But we also had a smaller percent, that 5%, that there for them, an important benefit was that publishing in open access, because of the visibility and without because it's without barriers. And of course, that also would speak to the aspect of copyright. But we can see most people, the fact that the reader can access the work and that the work is visible, that was the most important benefit, while we had smaller percentages for the others. And we also looked at the aspect of open access publishing awareness, what people know about open access publishing. So also we had a 71%, which was majority, which what they understand about open access publishing was that it's a free publishing of articles so that the knowledge in the journal is open to all. And that was followed by 16%, which open access, it promotes free access to whatever resources. And it was also great to see that open access does not equate to predatory journals, because at times, this is what some people would equate open access to. So we had a 0%, which was quite great. And open access can also be quality journals. I mean, sometimes the journals are still new and they might need time to get their impact factor and stuff like that. And also, so this was great to see that APCs don't necessarily have to be part of open access. It depends on the publishing model, but not necessarily that every open access publishing model would require the payment of article processing charges, which is APCs. So also then we looked at open access publishing benefits and awareness in terms of open access publishing, and we found that 69% of the people are aware actually of open access publishing, while we had 31% that is not aware. And of course, that is also something that we need to probably raise awareness about in terms of it's one thing to know open access, but how do you publish open access? And we know as librarians, as researchers and academics, this is almost our space that we're supposed to be contributing to in terms of open access. And then we looked then at open access publishing models. So a lot of people, 55%, they went for the option of, so in their terms of preference, in terms of open access publishing models, majority almost prepared the combination, which is gold open access, green open access, and hybrid, because we understand that at times one might not have the money to pay for the article processing charges and might have to go for a green open access and put a copy after embargo in a repository. So majority actually found that all three models would work for Africa. And we can see that was followed by gold open access, which is mostly the repositories where the work gets made available after a certain period. And I thought, just because, we asked the question, and we might have some people that are wondering, what is all of this open access publishing models? So when we talk about gold open access, so one publishes the article in an open access journal, and then one pays an article processing charges if required. And of course, this depends on the publisher. And we've seen that, it can be unaffordable for some researchers and for some institutions, because it's a good number of dollars. And then that allows you, gold open access allows immediate open access, which is very great, because then the paper is visible immediately. However, at times one might go for the green open access route, which is you publishing in a subscription-based journal. And then you can search for an open access repository and you can self-archive a copy that is allowed. And this at times, that's where you would come with an embargo, where the publisher would say, you can put a copy in the repository, but this can only be 6 months or 12 months after it's being published. So then it can be immediate or delayed open access, depending on the publisher. While on the other side, one can publish in a subscription-based journal. However, that one article, if one pays for the article processing charges, that one article can be made immediately available open access. And we see, all of these are quite great and wonderful, but where there's money involved, if an author or a researcher does not have the money, then gold might not be possible. And also hybrid might not be possible. And we know that there is other open access publishing models, such as Diamond, where it's free for the researcher to publish, and it's also free for the reader to use. But we all understand that someone has to fund that, and we did not ask about that, because we understand. I think it's important to just tackle the basics at this stage. And when we looked at why the survey participants preferred a certain model, so we looked at why one preferred a hybrid open access, and And this is just some of the comments that was given, or the reasons, because hybrid encourages both upcoming and experienced authors to publish, and also it's the best of both worlds. So of course you can, because you can make your copy immediately available and free for the reader to access, even though it's a subscription-based journal. And it facilitates publishing and access to information freely, while others preferred Gold Open Access because of it has less restrictions. And of course, the author is not paying, and it has advantage of making the article freely available as soon as it's published or after a certain period. And I think with anything, a lot of Gold Open Access is making the work freely available immediately. While the green open access, the nice thing is that the author does not have to pay anything. While we know with a hybrid option and with the Gold Open Access, that's assuming someone has the funds to pay for that article to make it immediately available. And one participant commented that it depends on whether you are the author or the reader, or whether you have funding or not, which speaks to someone might choose Gold Open Access, which is via the repository route, because they don't have money or they can't afford the APCs. While I think at the end of the day, we're interested that in the reader gets immediate access to the work. So of course, also we looked at International Open Access Week, if people were willing to engage and if they're even aware of International Open Access Week, as we know we're celebrating that, but some people might not be aware. So it was great to see that 79% of the participants were aware of the Open Access Week, which is the week we're celebrating. And also we looked if we wanted to understand if they'd be willing to take part in Open Access Week, and the majority of 90% also mentioned that they would be glad to take part in Open Access a week. And we also looked at how would one like to participate. I mean, there's different activities, and it's always nice to see what would people be willing to engage in. And 78% were willing to engage in a webinar, which is nice. I mean, in a COVID time and the pandemic, we can all easily connect from South Africa, Nigeria, Uganda. But of course, if it was pre-COVID, we could probably decide we'll all come and gather in Accra for a training or something else. So a lot of people, 78% would prefer a webinar, and that was followed by 50%, which preferred a training workshop, and others 9% an exhibition. And we also looked at Open Access Week activities that would be beneficial. So it's one thing to say a webinar would be beneficial or a training workshop, but we wanted to dig deeper on what of those activities would be beneficial. So we know also for planning for in future, what would the association or the members like to participate in what activities they'd find useful to them. So majority, which is 70%, they would want activities that would provide a clear outline of how libraries fit into open access and how they can drive structural equity for the continent. So this was great to hear that we all probably understand open access, but we're like, what is my role? How do I fit in all this in this space of open access? So what role can libraries play? And also, how do we drive structural equity for the continent? So outlining that role, that was important as an important activity task we can do. And that was followed by 61%, which would like to more awareness about open access. And we can see also 55% would want training on in-depth understanding of open access. And we can see smaller percentages looking at the different role of the different participants in this space. So what's the role that educators and researchers can play in open access? And of course, also one could look into the role, what can librarians contribute to the space. And so we also looked at policy, so OA policy, which is if the institutions had the institutions that had open access policy and the ones that did not have. And we can see that actually only 23% of the institutions had an open access policy, while 40. And also looking at, so for the institutions that had a policy, if the librarians, the researchers, the academics were consulted when the policy was being put together, and we can see 82% commented that they were not consulted. And of course, in terms of implementation and buy-in, it's important for different stakeholders to be part of the policy development process. And that is something that we could probably, for those institutions that don't have a suggestion moving forward or a recommendation from there. And we also looked at open access policy advocacy, and if the participants would advocate for open access policy, and we see actually 97% said they would advocate. And some shared that because the policy provides a framework for consistent and decision making, and also it provides free access to scholarship, social justice. This is just some of the comments that the participants shared in terms of the importance of open access policy and why they would advocate for that. And of course, we can see it provides enormous benefits to African libraries, and it strengthens open access in Africa. Just some of the benefits that participants shared on open access policy. So equitable and fair access to information and research and development, and also open and free knowledge. It also guides dissemination of scholarship, encourages researchers to submit their articles and stuff like that. I will not touch on all of them. I think I might be out of time. And I think challenges, this is something we're very much aware of, but we wanted to understand what are the challenges that researchers, academics, and librarians are facing in terms of engaging with open access and open access publishing. So many did mention that they are aware of the challenges in terms of open access publishing, 69%, and majority said the challenge was when 2021 noted that when researchers are rated, the challenge is that when researchers are being rated, the ability to publish in journals with high impact factor is normally a hindering factor, because if I publish in a relevant open access journal, because it does not have an open access, it does not have a high impact factor, this might hinder one's growth and promotion and things like that. However, we know that open access, any journal will take time before it can acquire a high impact factor. But we see that is a challenge. The fact that open access journals are still new and they don't have a high impact factor. And also a second challenge that was seen is that high quality open access journals, they vary across disciplines, and it may not be easy to find high quality open access journals. And we can see also this is something we can contribute towards. How do we make sure that whatever open access journals are there, that they're high quality and that they get to become part of the accredited in like your DOAJ list, and also in the different databases that are reputable in the discipline, but also the challenge of APCs, which are sometimes unaffordable for researchers. So that was also noted as a challenge. And this is also just some of the challenges that the participants mentioned. So challenges with policy development and implementation, and communicating the policy throughout the institution. Implementation, we see, and capacity and resources, that was also noted as a challenge. And then, I know I ran a bit fast for the last few slides, but I think looking at then the recommendations. So we've done the survey, but then so what? So we see a lot of times, we've seen through the challenges that have been mentioned, and also the need of raising awareness in terms of open access benefits, that some people are actually not aware of this benefit. So we would like to recommend that we build capacity. And I think this is something that AFLIA has done over the years in different spaces and in different areas, building capacity in terms of open access in terms of the knowledge, the skills and understanding of open access for the librarians, the academics, the researchers, and also students. And this could be done by raising awareness about open access, raising awareness about the need to have an open access policy, and also about open access publishing. And I think, I touched earlier on the benefits of open access, and many people, many academics, researchers, and librarians are not aware of these benefits. Maybe they're not engaging because they're not aware of the benefits of open access. So also raising awareness in terms and engaging in terms of the benefits, raising capacity in terms of benefits of engaging in open access and open access publishing, and also, even starting open access journals. And another aspect would be looking at providing support and development, support for the development, implementation of open access policies and strategies. We know if there is a policy, normally it would guide academics, researchers in that institution to follow that. And of course, if an institution does not have, then of course, a lot of what a researcher would still be doing would be based on whatever policies, and at times that's publishing in high impact journals, which at times that might not be open access. So being able to assist those institutions that need to develop and implement open access policies or strategies, and also communication strategies, and resources to support open access engagement. We know some researchers might want to engage in open access, but they're in lack of resources. So that could be also an opportunity for affiliate to engage in. And that are also streamlining open access with promotion and tenure guidelines. We know that a lot of researchers and academics and librarians are publishing in high impact journals because that is what's expected by the institutions for one to get promoted and for one to be recognized. However, if then open access was also recognized and rewarded, like the publishing in high impact journals, so this could also be a way of advancing open access in the continent. And just some of other recommendations that we put together. So developing a vibrant communication strategy to promote open access, because we know some institutions already have open access policies and strategies. So this could be a way, how do we make sure that the whole institution, or how do we make sure that not just even outside the institutions, that people are aware of open access and the benefits that open access brings. And also institutional repositories, enhancing them so that they can support open access, because we know that when in terms of growing open access, a lot of the work would be put in the repositories. So being able to harvest that data and metadata to report on how has my article done, how many views, how many downloads has it had, and how many people have cited that. So of course, if the repository could assist from them, that could be very, very good. And this could actually help researchers to demonstrate their research. So their reach, they can support researchers to demonstrate their reach and impact of their work. And also in terms of building capacity, we could actually incorporate open access and open science into our curriculum in the continent. And also higher education institutions, so having OCID IDs, which is a persistent digital identifier, where you can actually access an author's work in one place, that it's not actually sitting. And also, if you search for Dr. Sarah Kadu, you'll find all the work under this persistent digital identifier, instead of one article is there and the other one is there. So this could also be a useful thing to do. And now, in terms of almost wrapping up for the survey, it is important that we don't just present the findings, but then what do we do moving forward? So it's great we've done this work, but so what? So what we came up with as a call to action, we put in some of the pointers that we also thought would be important for us to discuss and engage in, and see how do we move forward as AFLIA in promoting and raising awareness and making sure that some of the challenges that are being experienced with open access, we address those challenges. So an idea would be to look at strategies to support open access to African scholarship. So of course, we know a lot of people are looking forward to engaging in workshops and trainings and webinars like we're having today, and also working together to put in assisting those institutions that don't have open access policies. So developing the policies and also implementation guidelines, from learning from those that have gone ahead and they've implemented their open access policies. But also another aspect would be supporting researchers, academics, librarians, and students to participate in open access. So it's one thing to be aware, but also to decide that as a researcher that my first choice when I publish my work is actually publishing it open access, or I will make a copy available in my repository if I cannot publish it open access. So we could also do workshops and trainings with LIS professionals and practitioners. And also we could probably see how do we then participate and how do we engage with the policies that have already been developed by the institutions. And we are aware that we cannot do this alone, and also I cannot do this alone, but we need a multi-stakeholder collaboration and cooperation to ensure that we have equal participation across the continent in terms of building capacity through skills development, but also in how, because we see that open access is critical and important, how we can include that in curriculum, that even before someone gets to a PhD, they actually understand the importance of open access and they buy into the idea before they start publishing. And yes, so I spoke about capacity building for researchers, academics, librarians, and students, but also that idea of collaboration, working together to build a structural equity. Speaking to equitable participation of all producers and consumers of knowledge. So we're not seeing the publishers as being more important. We're willing to give them the copyright, but also we all almost working together to ensure that the work is freely available and accessible to all that need to access that work. And also speaking to open access that needs to embrace diversity of knowledge. We understand there's different ways of knowing and different practices, workflows, language. We know in Africa we've got lots of language, and English is just one of them, but we know that our scholarship is actually mostly published in English. I haven't read anything that was in Swahili or that was in any of the languages that we have in the continent. And also making sure that diversity in research outputs and research topics, that we don't focus on what is popular in the developed world or in the global north, but also we ignore relevant works that would be used and relevant to the continent. And that we don't necessarily have to publish in articles and books. There's other ways that one could publish work. And also open science, it should support the needs and it should support the needs and epistemic pluralism of scientific community as a whole. So which speaks to supporting the needs of the community, but also the different ways of knowing that there is no one way because it's coming from the worst, but there is different ways of knowing, and that is actually speaks to the diversity and adopting all those different ways. And just in closing up, so we understand that OA is crucial, especially for the Global South, and we need to put together some effective strategies to encourage adoption and also equitable participation for all the different stakeholders in the space. And we saw that from the survey also there's a need for greater awareness of open access benefits and also participation. And we are aware that, we all know the African proverb that if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, we have to go together. And that is why we're having this survey and coming to say, how do we put hands together to ensure that open access becomes the norm in Africa, and not something that 20 years down the line, we're still saying, how do we go about? But we actually can put together best practices that are authentic and relevant to the African needs on how we can promote open access and open science. Thank you very much for listening to that. And I will now pass over to Dr. Kadu. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alisa, for this presentation. It's been very elaborative, very, very informative, and I'm sure the participants really gained a lot. I remember you almost closed with a question. How do we go about ensuring that we all embrace open up access in Africa? And I believe that is going to get us started. Colleagues, at this point in time, would you keep your questions coming so that we can attend to them? I thank you. For now, as we wait for questions to come in, there is a question from Fatima, and she says, in terms of open access journals, how can one identify predatory journals? Probably you want to take that on as others come in.
Sorry, I'll stop my sharing. I think just probably just getting started in that. So how do we identify predatory journals? And of course, I guess also there was a time actually in South Africa where we had what they called a blacklist. So it was a list of journals that someone decided that these journals were actually predatory. And we saw that blacklists don't work because then a journal was probably emerging and then it was seen as being in that blacklist. But over the years, then you're like, oh, it's actually not, it's out of the blacklist now. But I think what has been important over the time, I think it's what they refer to as think, check, and submit. So what you're doing, I mean, a lot of the predatory journals that actually write to you say, we saw that you presented in the AFLIA conference and would like to publish your work. And of course, that's an exciting for every author because like, oh, okay, someone is actually recognizing my work. However, and it's think, how did they get hold of you? And also before you, so you check. So most of the journals, there's a high chance that if I have not published in it, my colleague or someone I know might have published in it. And then also we go check, where is this publisher based? What's the address? And can you see all the details that actually, I mean, when you look on a normal website, we should see where are you based? You're based in India, but where in India? You're based in someone's hotel room. And is there for every journal, there has to be a group of reviewers, there have to be board members and all those things that show that. And also those groups need to be diverse. If we're publishing a journal in South Africa, we can't only have South Africans sitting in that board. It has to be quite diverse. So you also have to look at these aspects, which will help you to identify, is it a predatory journal? Is it just an emerging journal, or it's actually just, so it's a predatory or it's just an emerging journal. And then only once you've done all those different checks, you can actually then probably submit your work. So it's think, check, and submit, and you can find that website and you can have a look. It gives you actually the different pointers on how one can look and see if the journal is predatory or not. Thank you, Sarah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much once again from the participants. They are really appreciating the presentation. And many of them are saying they are going to advocate for open access in their institutions. That is the way to go, colleagues. There is someone who asked the question, but is requesting for feedback in his email. So the question is, what would you advise me to strengthen my initiative in my institution to advocate for open access, provides the blog link, and I pretty much think the rest of us would also be happy to have some ideas on how to strengthen or advocate for open access. So maybe going general, how would you advise the participants to advocate for open access? Over to you, Andiswa.
Thank you very much for that, Sarah. Yes, the presentation would be shared on the AFLIA website. So I see there was a question also on that. So that will be shared. The same goes for the recording for this session. So it will be shared also to all participants by the Secretariat. And I think that that's actually a question and I guess call for action that we raised also coming from the survey results. How do we ensure advocacy, and how do we make sure that it's one thing to have a policy, but communicate that to the broader community and have the buy-in? So yes, so the question is looking at how do you strengthen one's initiative in the institution advocating for open access? I think more than anything, one way to advocate is how we do it as librarians all the time. If something is beneficial and I think it would make one's life easy, or it would, I mean, we know a lot of the people in the survey spoke about the importance of visibility of their work and the fact that not just the visibility of their work, but also the institution. So if that's something that's great and important, and of course, we know there's other benefits, citation in terms of publishing open access, then we have to tell the story. We have to shout the story as librarians. I might be having a reference session with an academic, but of course, then it's a matter of also knowing when to advertise the services and when to advertise what we do as the libraries. So making sure that we make use of all the available opportunities and being part of all those conversations happening in the faculties, because we know at times the academics, the researchers will not come to the library for such advice, but being part of all those conversations and embedding ourselves in the works and the different things that our community does. I think that could be one way we can have advocacy being effective. So we don't just have those seminars and webinars in the library, but whenever faculty members, academics are having webinars or sessions, then it might be a matter of us, if it's something they're talking about promotion or they're talking about publishing, then can I have a 5 minutes where I can talk about open access? I can talk about what the library is doing in open access publishing or what we plan to do. So of course, then you are almost speaking the language of your community and not trying to make them speak our language, but we're saying we're in line with what you're trying to do. And same goes with our users. They want access to resources, and the more resources one has, the more we can even better our practice. So we need to speak their language. We need to go where our community is rather than waiting for them to come to the library. And yeah, that is in short. And I don't know if Sarah, you'd like to add something. I know also Dr. Mensah is here, if they'd like to add anything from there.
Great. We do appreciate the response. There is another question for you. Is Google Scholar part of the official publishers of open access information resources? Do you like to take that on as well? Is Google Scholar part of the official publishers of open access information resources? Over to you, Andiswa.
Yes, thank you for that. Yes, so Google Scholar is not a publisher, but Google Scholar would index work. So, we look at the fact that, let's say, Web of Science is not necessarily a publisher, but it's an aggregator of different journals that are part of the Web of Science, or they're part of what other platform? Scopus. So they are aggregators. So Google Scholar indexes work from more places than let's say Scopus or Web of Science. So through that indexing, then Google Scholar is able to have the H index, because Google Scholar is able to say, okay, this is the one's publication, and who has said they've cited this work, who has said they've used this work, and hence we've got now a Google Scholar H index. We've got different indexes from Google Scholar, because Google Scholar is able to index all those different works, and they use the algorithms to link all those different things. So because Google Scholar does not have the restrictions that one has from Scopus or from Web of Science. So Google Scholar, you'd see one would have a higher H index from Google Scholar, because Google Scholar is not saying, oh, this journal is coming from the African continent. We probably don't know of the quality, or we don't index this kind of journal. Google Scholar indexes everything that's freely available, that's available on the web. And then that then one would have a better H index from Google Scholar than you would from Scopus, because Scopus is limited to those journals that are indexed by Scopus, and same goes for Web of Science. They'd be limited to those journals that they index. I hope that addresses the question to some extent. And feel free, colleagues, to add on anything. I know I might be speaking now on on the part of librarians, which yes, I might not be up to date with everything else. So feel free to add if I missed anything.
Okay, thank you so much. Silence means you've taken on the questions very well. Thank you, we appreciate. In relation to predatory journals, does the bills list publish all such kinds of journals, or it chooses what to publish on their websites because of the authenticity of the publication? So that is a question that someone is putting forward to you, Andisa. I can see the presentation was well received. The questions are still coming in. Over to you,
Yes,
Andisa.
the bills list. I mean, we call the bills list. So Bill woke up one day and decided, well, I'm going to put a list together of all the journals I think are predatory. And I think the downside with Bill's list, which we call the blacklist, how often will Bill be updating that work? And we found that there was some bias that this is a gentleman coming from the worst to the global north, that a lot of your African or publications from the global south were kind of almost seen to be predatory. While we're actually saying, oh no, this journal actually is just 2 years old and it's actually trying to get some momentum, get publishers, to get authors to continuously, so it's actually not predatory, but it's just a new journal. So there was a bit of bias, especially from towards authors and also journals from the global south, developing south, and of course that's speaking to Africa, India. A lot of those, they saw them as being predatory, while they were not. A good number of them were just emerging. They had not established themselves, and they were not yet, because then one would need to have set a number of years publishing continuously to be part, let's say, of DOAJ, which you all know. I mean, there is certain criteria that all those different indexes use. And if one has not met that criteria, it does not necessarily mean that one is the work is predatory. So then, of course, a Bill's list is not a trusted list, in the sense that you can see there's biases and there's prejudice, especially towards the global south and the developing countries. And then hence think, check, submit came up, because then it's saying I'd rather use my own intellect, and I'd rather use my own perception or to check that, is this journal really predatory, rather than someone who would see almost everything coming out of Africa to be predatory. Because I mean, I think that's something, that's not a good criteria that Bill was using then. So we don't necessarily advocate for Bill's list, but we advocate that whenever one thinks a journal is predatory, or they might be, I mean, if someone starts saying, bring your work and we'll publish you in the next week, you just need to pay us $100. And you're like, there is no peer review that takes a week. In most cases, peer review can take even up to 6 months. So already that is questionable then, and that one can see that there's elements of being predatory. So we rather look at, how do I identify something to be predatory? And then you say, okay, it wants me to pay to being published. It's not 8 pieces, but I'm paying to get published in a week. That's almost questionable practices. And are they even using double-blind peer review? So we look at those aspects, and then we could probably hopefully judge if a journal is predatory, rather than using Bill's list. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Colleagues, keep your questions coming in. We still have a few minutes. There is a question that came in through the chat, and it doesn't seem to be related to open access. So I'm sorry, this question is not going to be forwarded to the presenter. Now, as colleagues think of the questions related to open access, I would like Andiswa to display one more time the call for action slide, and we see if colleagues have something else to add on the call for action. Is that something you can quickly do? Okay, thank you, we appreciate. So colleagues, these are the areas that we want to consider today, and we want to own them, and then also forward to AFLIA. So any suggestions, or you are consenting, or whatever you want to do to the call to action will be much appreciated. One of the items that we need to have strategies to support open access to African scholarship. And this is mainly through workshops and training. And also we need to have the OA policies developed in places where they are not yet developed. And also we need to have implementation guidelines. And the second one is supporting researchers, educators, librarians, and students to participate in OA activities. And that could be in form of workshops and training, or policy development and implementation. And the third aspect is that multi-stakeholder collaboration and cooperation is highly called for here. So because we need to build capacity, and also through skills development, and also look at the LIS curricula we have on the African continent to include issues related to open access. So anything else you want to add on, please let us know. You can just quickly type it in the chat. We shall pick it up very fast from there, or you can also put it in the Q&A if you think that is helpful. We thank you. So thank you so much for your feedback in advance. Now I go back to the questions. There is a question from one of us, and it goes, what is the take on transformative OA models by librarians in Africa? What is the take on transformative OA models by librarians in Africa? Over to you, Andiswa.
Thank you so much for that question. I will not try and speak for academic librarians, but I have a bit of understanding in terms of that. So, I mean, transformative open access models, it's a new way of doing things, and it came from the global north. And the idea with transformative open access models, and I think this is also something that will be covered on Thursday when the academic library session does their panelists. So it's saying that we've got money we put towards subscription. We subscribe to Emerald, to Taylor and Francis, Elsevier journals, and all those different things that the libraries are subscribed to. And of course, I know academic libraries like the University of Cape Town will probably have a more budget than some libraries in other areas. So you've got, let's say you take your $1 million, whatever that budget is, you were subscribing to those publishers, but now you take that money and you put it in another pool, and from that pool, then you probably you can publish there, and your community has access to those resources. So your community, so people that are affiliated to UCT would have access to, let's say, another publisher that's outside Emerald, Taylor and Francis and Scopus. So we could have access, let's say, to, I don't know, another publisher that is not part of this pool that we initially used. So we probably had 5 in this pool, but now because we've moved our money to this transformative model, we might have access to 7. However, I mean, when we talk about open access, we're saying open access is free access to not just the UCT or institutions that are affiliated to South Africa, but to everyone, whether you are based in India, you're based in Nigeria. The idea of open access, it's free to access for the reader. And it's also, you're removing all those barriers. However, what I've done with this transformative open access, I've removed the barriers for my community. I remove the barriers for those people that are affiliated to my institution. It's great and well because your institution would have now access to more resources, but that's still not, that's not what open access movement is about. You're not, open access speaks to social justice. So that's looking beyond just my current community and what could benefit me. And of course, I think this also speaks to what AFLIA is about. AFLIA is not about let's remove access or let's remove these barriers for our members, but let's remove these barriers for the continent, that whether I am a member of this grouping or I'm not, but I will still have access to that resource because we understand that knowledge builds on knowledge, whether I can afford to be affiliated to this group or not. So then, of course, it's something that I think as African librarians and institutions, we probably need to think through that what is open access about, and are we actually doing open access when we come to these transformative or new models? And open access, it has to be barrier free. If there's still barriers, then we're still not doing open access, but we actually just are supporting these publishers to get richer and richer. Thank you very much.
Oh, wonderful. An addition to the call to action by Richard reads, promote the idea to give incentives to researchers and academics for publishing in OA journals and promoting open science. I think I like that. Thank you so much, Richard. At this point in time, I feel Andiswa has done a lot, and that is enough for the day. I'd like to call on Dr. Nkem or Dr. Mensah or any other person if they have a word to us. Dr. Nkem, do you have a word to us?
Thank you very much, Dr. Sarah. Thank you, Andeswa. You know, I've been stuck, you know, listening to you, hearing the questions and then the answers. And of course, that call to action, you know, from the findings of the survey, we still have a long way to go. But I believe a step at a time, especially a step in the right direction, is really worth it. And what we are doing this year, or what we started, you know, with finding out what's really on the ground first, I think is really a step in the right direction. There's something else too that, and that's what for me, she said something about social justice, you know, opening up knowledge, you know, opening up access to knowledge. It's not just for the fun of it. It's for building inclusivity. It's for that social justice to ensure that more people have access to knowledge that will help us have sustainable development, that more researchers, more academics and so on, that they are visible all over the world, especially the ones from Africa, because people are doing great things in Africa too. So it is really, I don't know, it's a multi-layered thing that we have to peel off slowly, one by one. But I know that we'll get there, especially when we take up this call for action. And then we are hoping that throughout this week, as we listen more to other activities, that will get to a point where we can now say, these are the next viable steps that we can take as the African LIS sector. So thank you, Andeswa. Thank you, Dr. Kadu. Thank you to the whole team. You've done great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nkem. We do appreciate the words of wisdom. And now something that came in when Dr. Nkem was speaking to us is an addition to the call for action. and it's from Judith. So she's suggesting, how about AFLIA pushing for something like the Berlin Declaration, whereby through AFLIA we can push for institutions to support open access of a full length, including a buy-in in open access policies and mandates. I will thank you so much for the addition to the call for action. Colleagues, at this point in time, I want to ensure we keep on time. I have a few announcements for you. Following this webinar, please note, there will be an interactive panel discussion organized by the academic, library, and library consortia section on the topic, open access, the global versus African perspectives. That will take place on the 28th of October, 2021 at the same time. I'm repeating. Following this webinar, colleagues, you need to note, and you don't have to miss if you must, there will be an interactive panel discussion organized by the academic, library, and library consortia section on the topic open access, the global versus Africa perspectives. And this is scheduled for 28th October 2021 at 12 noon GMT, the same time as this webinar has been held. The discussion will delve into key and contentious issues of open access that intricate gaps and realities of operationalizing open access in Africa, and propose solutions that can help Africa attain UNESCO recommendations on open science. So I want to see you there on 28th of October, that is a Thursday, at 12 noon GMT. I kindly remind that all of us, we are encouraging you and your institutions that are not yet members to AFLIA to contact AFLIA membership officer whose details appear on the website. That said, I want to wish everyone the rest of the day, a wonderful rest of the day.